Without further ado, first things first, if we could just give a round of applause for all the wonderful people here at B-Sides, for bringing B-Sides to Bristol. So, a little overdue, but it's great that it's here, and it's great to see so many people in the InfoSec community. So everybody loves a disclaimer, so let's get that out of the way. There's a disclaimer. So let's crack on. Right, so a little bit about me. I'm Andy. I'm Andi. I joined IBM 3 years ago as a security architect. I now lead a growing team of security architects within the business. And we've grown from 1 to 24 in the last 12 months. So if you're looking for any jobs, look up IBM jobs. We'll get over that. So cool. So a brief agenda. Now, this isn't going to be in any particular order. So we're going to talk about the cloud. We're going to talk about the problem. Hackers, things like that. We're going to talk about the solution, and then if there's any time for a conclusion and some questions at the end. So, quick show of hands. Who's read the classic novel 1984 by George Orwell? Yeah, cool. Right, so that's it. For those that haven't, it's a dystopian novel written in 1948, funny enough, when computers looked much like this. Without further kind of, procrastinating about what happened then, what is the cloud? Where did it come from? How did it get there? When was it invented? So, in the very beginning, you have these clever people. Does anybody know who they are? So we have Graham Bell to the left, Herman Hollerith to the right. Probably better known for telephones was Graham Bell, although history really kind of attributes it to this guy here. He invented the very first communications device, but it was Graham Bell that actually made it easier to do. And Herman Hollerith invented the punch card tabulator machine, which then went on to make IBM. And of course, there were hackers as well. So does anybody know who this guy is? Sure, thank you. So, and that's the enigma. So, of course, when we had computers back in the past, we were already hacking. So this was when we were down at Bletchley Park hacking the Enigma machine, which enabled us to decipher the messages from the Nazis in the Second World War. So, in the not so beginning, obviously telephones were more made accessible to everybody, and so we had phone freaks. And we also had old IBM mainframes as well. So, of course, history shows us that it's always been there. It's always been a problem. Does anybody know what this is? So 2600 whistle, very good. Cigar to that there. So, if that's PC nowadays. Basically, for those that don't know what it is, there was a cereal in America called Captain Crunch, and it used to blow 2600 hertz down a telephone line. So if you blew it down the telephone line, it would open up free calls, you get free calls. And so, of course, phone phreaking was born. So it escapes me a little bit. I think it was John Draper or something like that, who was nicknamed Captain Crunch, who did a quite a long stint in jail. But further and subsequent to that, people were also intrigued by this 2600, so people started to emulate it when obviously the telecoms companies and the governments made Captain Crunch stop selling this. So some of the people that used to replicate this device, it was called a blue box, are Steve Wozniak, Steve Jobs. There's hackers everywhere. People have been hacking forever and ever and ever. And so, of course, hacking continued to evolve. So when I was a lad, yeah, that is me, computers looked much more like this. And I as opposed to kind of how people use computers nowadays, I use them probably in a lot of ways that you use them. And so, of course, when I was about 11, I started to build my own computers. And so going on bulletin board systems and things like that, the internet came along, and it was amazing because it was this new place where everybody could communicate. So again, we've gone through all these different eras, and we've all been connecting to the cloud, right? So, taking back to the IBM old mainframes, you use teletypewriters to control them. So how old is the cloud? I don't actually know the answer because it's been around for so long. So when I started to grow up, I started to build my own data centers. And of course, that essentially is a cloud. So I started to build my own cloud. And then kind of the last 10, 15 years, the cloud as we know it was born, right? So strategies started to evolve as people started to move their workloads to the cloud. And of course, it's super cool, isn't it? It's the cloud. It can do everything. It will save our existence. It will be able to do all kind of a manner of things, with all the different capabilities, all the different models, of course, all the rules that we have to abide to. The road ahead for everybody, is actually really, really full of surprises, right? So, more often than not, I hear people's catastrophes of moving to the cloud and not, we're going to start doing cloud ourselves. Can you give us a hand with it? It's always too far down the line that they come back to us and say, actually, yeah, we should have taken your advice and actually got some help before we started our journey to cloud. So, take that as a piece of advice because, of course, the aftermath, it can be pretty catastrophic. So there are some good examples of cloud topologies, right? We see some really good examples of cloud, but then we see some really, really, really bad examples of cloud. All right? Now, this is a really interesting, important slide because, I'm really happy that I got that response, to be honest, but it plays on something called confirmation bias, right? So this brings me back a little bit to the kind of George Orwell times, the kind of dystopia, whatever dystopia is. Too normally we're overrun by our own confirmation bias. And that basically takes us away from true fact or what is actually factually true. So, of course, you take the emotion away, you take the bias away, or at least you try to take the bias away. Now, unfortunately, we all have this. It's programmed into us. We can't change it. What we can do is we can be mindful of it so we can try and make better informed decisions. Like I said, relying on fact and not just what confirms your belief. And similarly, I'm not a religious person by any means, but, to judge is to be judged. So, I always say that, I can't judge someone for doing something on a basis that I have no authority to do so. If there's someone, coming here today, there was someone in a Honda Civic wanting to go past me at lightning speed, right? Yeah, perhaps I think, God, what a one I've got here, what are they doing? I'm going to sit at 70 in the fast lane, but who am I to judge? Who can I honestly stand up to and say, well, I know that they're being an idiot for trying to drive fast. They could be they could be driving to go and see a dying relative. I don't know that. They could just be, late for work and they should have got up 5 minutes earlier. So yeah, perhaps they are an idiot. But, at the end of the day, you can't really, judge just on the basis of that. And of course, why do hackers hack? Because data is the new oil. So as we bring out all these new technologies and all these new things, of course, the threat landscape changes. So we're now seeing the criminals and the cyber gangs, using a lot of this new technology in ways that we don't understand, ways that we don't see. And we have to always try and maintain that one step ahead. Now, of course, if businesses are now monetizing all their data out of all the machine learn algorithms that they're processing against these things, then of course, the cyber criminals are going to do that as well, right? Right? So, but it's okay because we've been saved, right? We've got quantum, we've got blockchain, we've got AI, and it's gonna save the world. It's going to revolutionize the world. Of course, what we're seeing is catastrophes in a lot of this. So, what do you mean? Now, we've been playing around with image recognition. So So obviously, I hope you all know how image recognition works, right? You plow your algorithms into your AI and show it a load of, right? We'll talk about foxes, right? You want it to recognize a fox. You train it with a load of data about foxes. Now, one might not know that if I now stick a picture of a toaster with rainbow colors all over it, I've now spoiled that algorithm, and it will now not process fox data and will not correctly look at data that pertains to being a fox. So, of course, if you think a bit deeper about this, well, why would I not want to start then trying to hack people and poison their AI data? Right? That's a perfectly good way of sabotaging a business. So, and of course, a lot of the time, a lot of the people that are making these things, have no concept of security. They have no ability to be able to think about, well, how do I do this securely? And has everybody, or just a quick show of hands, anybody heard of the hype cycle in Gartner? Yeah. Okay. So the hype cycle is a kind of theory that when a new technology comes out, there's a hype for it, and this hype really kind of dictates how well or how rubbish this thing does. But what we always find is that there's a peak, and it's at that peak that we realise that these technologies aren't actually going to save everything. That they're not going to be able to make us, save the world and all the great things. Don't get me wrong. In the future, 20, 30, 40 years, we may be. I don't know if you can see, that's where we are at the moment with machine learning. So we're just about to drop into the trough of disillusionment. Now, the trough of disillusionment is that we realize that, okay, this isn't actually going to fix everything. So you can see just here, we've got less than 5% of the potential audience has actually successfully adopted the technology fully. So that is still a few years away yet. So it's not going to fix everything. So how do we fix it? Well, we all are aware of Devops. I'm hoping we're mostly aware of Devops. So that's traditional DevOps. Now, unfortunately for us, or fortunately, developers are going out, spitting out this lovely magical unicorn poo, and we're going around having to sweep it up everywhere. And so, of course, the methodologies and the frameworks, I've come across multiple DevOps teams across not just the UK, but internationally as well. And everybody's got their own way of doing it. So kind of, what do we do? Right now, I like to think that security is everybody's responsibility. Who's responsible for the security of your house when you leave it at the end of the day? Do you have a security guard that looks after it? Do you ring up some special number to say, right, I've left the house now, it's locked, it's alarmed, it's engaged? No, you don't. But what we do know in DevOps is a good buzz term, which is infrastructure as code. So everybody aware? Who's aware of infrastructure as code? Cool. So I like to think there are some good books on this as well. It's culture as code, right? Changing the mindset, changing the culture. Because if you change the culture, then you change the way people think and take security. Very, very important. So who's got social media? Everybody, yeah? I'll tell you what, who hasn't got social media? Cool, no one. Oh, one over there, cool. So, fair play, absolutely fair play, Now, it's a great thing, right? It's a platform which can make things great. It's a platform where everybody now has an opinion. But of course, the problem is when you mix that with technology, it gives people a platform to voice their confirmation bias. And of course, people are emotional. People are changeable. People have habits. So of course, giving them a platform to voice all their opinions and all their bad bad juju, obviously makes real weird things happen. So, never is a time when we've been so connected that we that we are so divided, right? A whole nation's just pretty much been divided based on Brexit, and the vitriol that you see from both sides of the argument. It's just like, being in a school playground when these people are actually looking after our actual world, So kind of, we got to rein it in a bit. Now, and this brings me back to kind of 1984, right? Because for those that haven't seen it, I won't spend too long talking about it, but every day they used to meet and watch the television. It was called the telescreen, and they would participate in what they called the 2 minutes hate, right? And the 2 minutes hate was them watching their enemies of the state, and they would play videos of these people, and they would all scream and shout abuse and spread their vile hatred against their enemies. And of course, the way in which they manipulated the news, they manipulated the media, they really kind of, changed the way people's perception. Yesterday's enemy was completely forgotten about, because tomorrow's enemy is the one that's right in front of their face. So we see this now all the time, all over social media, all over social networking. So, again, how do we fix that? I mean, any ideas? For me, this is really, really undervalued, right? It's basic, it's generally easy, and it's generally something all of us have. Every single one of us. We all have morals and we all have values. And so kind of shifting that behavior, changing that culture, changing that mindset, security is everybody's responsibility, should help to better ourselves. We'll never get rid of the problem. We'll only have to just find new ways of fixing the problem. So of course, let's get back to the technology. So Devops Acceleration is too fast for security. That's what I hear all the time. How do we integrate with your pipelines? How do we integrate with your tool chains? Because security is static. Security is seen as saying no. We're all saying no. You can't do it like that. You can't do it like this. I don't think that's right. I think security is a driver for cloud adoption and into DevOps methodologies, because changing that culture, changing that mindset, shifting to the left, means that DevSecOps becomes kind of part of everyone's way of thinking. And of course, that way we get into a much easier continual delivery of our clouds and services and solutions, to be able to keep up with the pace of change, to keep up with the pace of DevOps and DevSecOps, and making sure that all of our pipelines and our chains are as secure, and we're taking all the necessary steps to embed this in. And of course, there are hundreds of tools to help us. Absolutely hundreds of them. So, if you don't know or not comfortable with one, try another. Because at the end of the day, what you'll practice and preach today will be something completely different tomorrow. And I'm always, having to kind of change my mindset on things. When, for instance, SHA-2 and SHA-3 become bad, it'll be, what will it be next? SHA-4, 5, 6, and so on and so forth. So with the cloud, it will always change. It will always adapt. It will always evolve, and we have to try and be one step ahead. And like I said, what I preach today, tomorrow will be something completely different. Now, how again, do we be able to really rein that in? How do we make sure that we're all working towards a common goal? Well, it's pretty easy. Ethics, morals, and collaboration. Let's work together. Let's share ideas. Let's participate in constructive criticism. And let's join and build a community. It's great seeing everybody here today at B-Sides. It's awesome. And I've rattled through those quite a bit quicker than what I thought. So there's a couple of good links there. We got about 10 minutes left, 9 minutes left. So are there any questions?
Do you see central security teams getting bigger or smaller or staying the same due to DevSecOps?
Well, it's a good question actually. So where we're seeing things, what we're doing is the DevOps teams are integrating security into them. So rather than pulling in the security people to come and fix their projects, fix their teams, fix their methodologies, they're employing. So in some instances, the larger teams are becoming smaller because those skill sets are going towards the development side. But then, of course, you're always going to need a higher level of help sometimes. So what I do see is those teams becoming smaller from the security standpoint, the DevOps team becoming a little bit bigger, but them still also relying and needing to bring in those extra resources when they can't fill those gaps. Any others? Yo.
Slightly off topic, do you have any of your stolen message pad for Andi's available for purchase today?
I do not, but come and see me afterwards and I'll let you know where to get them.
Do you think we're going a little bit like 1984 in the sense of more of our data is now stored in cloud providers, they might more of it? So, for instance, we recently launched Facebook for Work in our organisation, and it saves every single search that we make. And of course, it holds like a lot of our organisational data that we've got to use of our offices now and what we're doing and things like that. Do you think we'll get to a point where we start to have a rational conversation about what we're going to put in the cloud and what we're not?
Well, I mean, the thing about the cloud is the shared responsibility model. So you know about the CCM matrix and stuff. So the cloud capability model, I get mixed up with my acronyms, but look it up. CCM 3.1, I think we're on our controls matrix at the moment. But absolutely. The good thing is I talk about dystopia and utopia. I mean, what is utopia? Does anybody want to live in a perfect world where everything's hunky-dory and really happy and fluffy? I'm not sure that people do, but of course there becomes a crunching point, and I think we're nearing that kind of critical mass of where the people will start. I'm not saying go and become a SJW and start shouting from rooftops and tying yourself to buildings and stuff, but definitely, I think the conversations are beginning to be had.
So, sorry, disclaimer, I work for a vendor. With DevOps and DevSecOps, do you see them being part of the same pipelines, or do you see actually separate pipelines?
No, all part of the same.
What about the risk of an insider being able to poison the pipeline with a malicious commit and gaining access?
There's always the insider threat. You can never be, how secure is secure? Secure isn't an end goal. And so, of course, the problem is people are people. The lady before, she was saying that, although we know what's good and what's bad, people still choose to do bad things.
Yeah, but having people who are developers who are very capable and competent, actually marking their own homework outside of their domain.
No, you've always got to sign off by somebody else, exactly. and that's the whole point.
Within the same pipeline or within a different pipeline.
Right. I see what you're getting at. Right. So obviously from one to other, yes, absolutely, because you should always have sign off of somebody else's work. Mm-hmm. So the thing about the pipeline is it may still be able to come under the same pipeline, but then it will get picked up at that QA stage when they go, well, hang on, what's this here?
Yeah. I mean, I'm thinking about developers putting public IPs on instances.
Don't go there. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And exposing 65,000 ports.
Yeah. It's that kind of, it's going to make my code work, so I'll do it. But where is the check and balance to make sure that?
Yeah, and that's why I'm seeing some. And don't get me wrong, they're still early days. They still don't want to adopt. They still see security as an inhibitor. They think it will slow them down. To a degree, it does a little bit. But if companies like Netflix can do it, then why aren't the rest of us kind of following?
If I can add, there's tech available already to scan automation templates.
Yeah.
Break the build or break the food shifters if it hits certain obvious criteria.
Yeah.
Competent malicious insider actually putting backdoors in, going around. It's the same thing like DLP problem. You
You can create DLP tech that stops people doing stupid things, but you can't create DLP tech that stops errors and stuff like that, right? So
Yeah. Cool. Is there one at the back as well? Any more? Cool. Well, that's a wrap.
Thank you very much.
Thank you ever so much, everybody. Thank you.